Revolution of common sense.
Revolution of common sense.
A revolution of common sense.
Truth was once common sense, but today, truth is uncommon. Explore biblical truths around faith, business, and politics with Peter Demas. Uncommon sense in current times.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. I'm excited today with our guest. Joining me from Israel, which is America's greatest ally, is David Rubin from Samaria, is also known as the West Bank to some. He is the former mayor of Shiloh in Israel. He is the founder of the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, which he established after he and his 3-year-old son were wounded in a terror attack in 2001. He's the author of 7 books, including his latest, Confronting Radicals, What America Can Learn from Israel. That has recently been made into a movie. He's a frequent commentator on Fox News and Newsmax, and his columns have appeared in Jerusalem Post, Israel National News, and other places. He's considered the trusted voice of Israel. So, David, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you, Peter.
So I'm curious. So when we're talking about the peace deal between Hamas and Israel, it was presented here in the United States that Trump put pressure on Hamas to get this deal, and but I was kind of surprised to learn that the deal isn't the best for Israel. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, the deal is terrible for Israel. It's not even not great for Israel. It's a terrible deal. But basically, the main factors of the deal are this. In phase 1 of the deal, there are 3 potential phases of a deal. In phase 1, we get back 33 hostages, some alive and some dead. They get back several thousand terrorists, all alive, and some of the worst murderers in modern history are being released. They're being released mostly within Israel or within Judea or Samaria or Gaza, however you define these places. You can see in the background, okay, this is the heart of Samaria, where I am. So, this is a bizarre situation in which Israel has been forced, and yes, the United States also, because there are some American hostages. We've been forced into a situation where we have to negotiate with terrorists, negotiate with one of the worst terrorist organizations in modern history, and we have to release several thousand terrorists as part of this deal, and agree to a ceasefire in a war that we were clearly winning. So that's the situation. It's a bad deal. I understand the motivations to go ahead with it because we haven't been succeeding in getting back the hostages up to this point. And there's always the fear that in the war, some hostages might be killed. So that's our main concern, to get the hostages out safely, unless they've been killed by Hamas, which some of them have been.
So when you say Israel was pressured, because again, it was reported here that Trump put the pressure on Hamas, and you used the phrase Israel was pressured. How was Israel pressured out of this deal?
Well, Israel is pressured into it, pressured by the internal pressures from the Israeli population, from the hostage parents and families who want their loved ones back, and understandably so. Israel was pressured also by Biden and by President Trump, who wanted to go into office seeing that hostages are being released. So the pressure was on. Pressure was on Israel as well, yes. Since then, President Trump, now let's just, have full disclosure here, okay? I'm the author of a book called Trump and the Jews. a very, very positive book about President Trump. And it's positive because of the research that I did, things that I found out about President Trump that I didn't know before, about why he is such a good friend of Israel. So it hurt me a little bit as Trump was being inaugurated to be criticizing his pressure on Israel to push through this deal. Having said that, since he's been in office and since he's getting excellent advice from some excellent advisors that he appointed, he's been truly coming into his own. It's the President Trump that we knew and loved from his first term. And he's come out with some profound statements about where he would like this thing to go. So he's meeting with Netanyahu in Washington, and I believe that we're going to be very happy with the results, because what he's talking about is several things. First of all, I believe that Israel is going to be given a green light to go forward in this war once at least most of the hostages are released. I would like to see all the hostages released, and that's where the big test will be on President Trump and on Qatar and Egypt, which want to have good relationship with the United States. Qatar is trying particularly hard to have a good relationship with the United States, so it's pretending to be an objective mediator, even though it's the biggest supporter of the Hamas terrorist organization. But Egypt also receives heavy funding from the United States and military funding. So Egypt could be expected to cooperate with President Trump as well. And President Trump has come out with this statement that he would like to see a relocation of the population from Gaza to some of the Arab countries, which is a brilliant idea. Okay, and I've been talking about it for years, so I don't want to be seen to be complimenting myself. But President Trump, but the truth is that it's brilliant coming from an American president, because for about 25 years we've been banging our land for peace heads against the wall, saying that Israel has to give up land. We're a country about the size of New Jersey. Okay, try and imagine that. We are surrounded by Arab countries that have 700 times the landmass of the little state of Israel. And we're being told that we have to give up land. We have to give them land, hand it over to terrorists who are sworn to our destruction, who are literally human savages. I'm sorry for using that term human to describe them. They're simply savages. They're on a level of the Nazis or worse. And, from the massacre on October 7th, when they massacred 1,200 Israeli civilians in cold blood, raped the women, publicized videos on social media, bragging of their exploits. And this all happened, carried out by Hamas, financed by Qatar, financed by Iran. And all of these countries are the ones that should be taking in these savages into their country. If they care so much about them, let them take them. Okay, I'm not even saying that they should be relocated to European countries. We don't need to poison Europe even further than it's already been poisoned by these Muslim refugees. So that's Trump's idea, and I hope that he will use all the powers of his office to make it happen.
I had an opportunity years ago, probably 15 years ago, where I got to sit down for a few minutes with Moshe Sharon, and he used the phrase that in the Muslim culture, lying is the salt of words. And he said, and I asked him, how do you negotiate with a culture that believes that lying is a good thing? You know, when you negotiate, especially if you negotiate in like-minded people, you're assuming both people are being honest with what they're going to do afterward. But if you're lying throughout the whole time, then it doesn't seem to work. So it seems like this peace deal with Hamas, especially with what you're saying, that releases all these terrorists back out, seems like all it is doing is just delaying another October 7th or something similar to that. Would you agree with that?
Well, it's not just that it seems to be that. That's what it is.
Okay.
That's what it is. It's clear. It's clear, and we know that because in the last large hostage deal, uh, back in 2011, 1,000 terrorists were released, and they were tracked after that. 82% of the released terrorists from that hostage deal returned to commit other terrorist attacks, many of them murders. So we know for a fact what is going to happen. We know for a fact what these terrorists are going to be doing or trying to do once they are out.
So that's unreal because that's roughly in my math in my head, that's 850, 900 people that did that. So in this situation, though, you referenced that Israel was winning. Help the people listening to this because I happen to believe that as well. So, but a lot of people listening to this don't seem to understand exactly what was going on, what was happening there. So, and I know you actually have some ministers, I believe, that are threatening to walk out now if we continue with this peace deal. How is Israel winning this war, and what do you think is going to happen if we continue down this path with this peace deal or this hostage? I won't call it a peace deal. Let's call it a hostage exchange.
Well, it's not a hostage exchange. It's a it's an exchange, but it's not a hostage exchange because they're the ones that were holding our hostages, our civilians. We're the ones holding their terrorists. So it's lopsided just for that, not even for the numbers, which of course are lopsided. Yeah, let me give a little bit of the history.
Please.
Gaza region. Okay, so Israel is a country about the size of New Jersey. Gaza is a region in the southwest corner of Israel along the coast. It's smaller than the state of Delaware. It's a tiny area. It has some beautiful beaches, frankly. I was there before it, the Israeli communities left Gaza. And, Gaza has a rich history for the Jewish people. Anyone who's a little bit biblically literate knows about Samson. And Samson lived in Gaza. So it's a place that we are connected to over thousands of years. But okay, from 1948 to 1967, Gaza was controlled by by Egypt. And the Egyptians settled Arabs there. And until it became to a point where, they had a very high birth rate at that time. And within a matter of years, you had a couple of million Arabs squished into this small piece of land, which is Gaza. And Israel after the Six-Day War, when Israel recaptured Gaza, gradually Jewish communities were established in Gaza, agricultural communities mainly, with some very innovative agricultural techniques that have been adopted around the world. Well, those communities were destroyed under pressure. Israel withdrew these communities, demolished the communities for the sake of peace. And what happened? The Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorist organizations moved into the areas of those communities, not to build greenhouses, but to establish missile launchers. And that's what they did. They set up missile launchers. And for the next 20 years, they've been firing missiles at Israel. Sometimes there are slow times, and then a ceasefire is reached, and they stop firing the missiles for a few months in order to keep that ceasefire so that they can rearm and rebuild. Then they start firing rockets again. Israel goes into Gaza again and starts destroying a lot of buildings and destroying all their warehouses, weapons warehouses, and rocket launchers. And then a ceasefire is reached under American pressure. And then Israel agrees to the ceasefire. And then for several months, there's a quiet situation, not many rockets fired from Gaza. And then it all starts up again because they're rearming from the Egyptian side of the Gazan border. And they're rearming. They're rearming the whole time. Egypt enables that rearming to happen, to smuggle in weapons. And we've been in this movie about 3 times already in the past 20 years. And then came October 7th. Okay, the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And the most brutal, far more brutal than what the Nazis did. We're talking about rapes, we're talking about beheadings, we're talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. Taking babies hostage. We still don't know what happened to those babies who've been taken hostage. Horrible situation. And, Hamas did it and publicized it and was proud of it. So Israel went to war against Hamas and said, this time it's going to be different. This time we are going to destroy the Hamas terrorist organization. We have goals in this war. We are going to destroy the Hamas terrorist organization in Gaza. We are going to prevent them from being a military or civilian power in Gaza, so they will not control any of the population. We are going to free the hostages in whatever way we can. And by the way, at the same time, Lebanon was attacking from the north. And so one of the goals of the war is to return our civilian populations to the northern part of the country because they were evacuated. So this is the situation that we have today. Israel has vowed to carry out this war, to complete the war, and to make it to the point that Gaza cannot be a threat on Israel anymore. What that means remains to be discussed. And I'm sure it's going to be discussed between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. And agreements will be reached. Whether they'll be publicized or not, we don't know.
When I was took my family to Israel probably 10, 12 years ago, and it was when we left the day that some of the rockets were being fired from Gaza, and it was we were there when they actually closed down. We were the last people leaving Temple Mount when they closed that down due to stuff. But what's fascinating to me was the U.S. press was reporting all this stuff. These riots was happening in downtown Jerusalem, and we were there. We were walking the streets, shopping, watching the street performers, and you look at the headlines and the pictures, and it wasn't even close to accurate. Uh, that has to be some level of frustration, even when you have U.S. support, that the mainstream media doesn't seem to report accurately what's going on over there. How do you, how as a country do you feel about that when you see some of the distortions that are being placed on what's happening over there, particularly what's going on with Hamas and Hezbollah?
Well, it's incredibly frustrating, and I have to tell you that uh, the Biden administration was pressuring Israel all through the war. From October 2023, the Biden administration has been pressuring Israel heavily to bring in humanitarian aid trucks to Hamas. And sure, they said it's going to the Gazan civilians. Well, who do they think we're talking about? Who controls Gaza? We're talking about Hamas. They were delivering trucks, thousands upon thousands of trucks went in over the course of some months into Gaza. They were all taken, all hijacked by the Hamas terrorist organization. They sold all the food. They sold all the drinks. They sold all of the. They used all of the fuel to fund their terrorist operation, and they even brought in security cameras on those trucks, which they used to ambush Israeli soldiers. That's what has been going on, and that's why the war has lasted so long. Israel, if given the green light, with no humanitarian aid coming into Gaza, Israel could shut down Gaza in just a few weeks, destroy and flatten all of Gaza, and relocate the populations. We need that green light from President Trump, but you have to understand this. Biden Biden and Anthony Blinken, who has turned his name into well, he would be on the list of one of the most evil, misguided leaders of Secretary of States of an American country. He was pressuring Israel heavily the whole time. And every bit of humanitarian aid that went into Gaza was taken by Hamas to fund its terrorist operation. So that's the reason why this whole thing has lasted so long. The media reports, well, we Jews here in Israel know what anti-Semitism is from our history because we learned Jewish history, and our families witnessed it, witnessed the Holocaust, witnessed everything that came before and everything that came after. And we've seen what has been going on American campuses in the past year and a half. Thank God that Trump is in power now. Thank God that he has a tremendous team of advisors like Elise Stefanik at the UN, and Mike Huckabee as ambassador to Israel, Mike Waltz, national security advisor, Pete Hegseth as defense secretary. I mean, we're talking about some serious people here who know their stuff. Of course, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Trump is getting excellent advice now, and I hope that it will lead to the proper decisions. War is not pleasant. As an Israeli, I could tell you that, and as a terror victim, I could tell you that. War is not pleasant, but there is such a thing as good and evil, as we teach our children, and most parents teach their children that there is something called good and evil. And it's important for us to be supporting the good, to be spreading light, not darkness to the world. But sometimes you have to destroy the evil in order to spread that light, in order to enable the spreading of that light.
I so you mentioned them using it for funding. Trump has maintained that if Biden did not reverse that deal on Iran, they would not have Hamas never would have gotten the funding necessary to carry out an attack like that. Do you agree with that? I know it can't hurt, but do you think they still would have carried out that attack if it weren't for the funding increase that would have gone to them?
Oh no, for sure, for sure. The funding encouraged them. The funding enabled it. As I said, Egypt was smuggling weapons into Gaza for many, many, many years. They were under pressure from Biden and Obama. Cement trucks were being brought into Gaza to enable the building of that massive terror network and tunnels underneath the ground. So they've been building up to this for years. And of course, Iran being the biggest financier of the terrorist organizations in the Middle East. So, we reached a point after October 7th when we realized that it just needed to be stopped. And by the way, if I could just throw in a note on a human level, if we were talking about humanitarian aid, it wasn't really humanitarian aid that was going to Hamas. We on the Israeli side have been in great need of humanitarian aid for our children. And Peter, I don't know if you know this, but I guess you do know this, that I was wounded in a terror attack at the end of 2001, along with my 3-year-old son, who was shot in the head. And so we were both wounded, and in our car, which had gone dead when the terrorists hit us. The terrorists were from the Tanzim militia, which is the terrorist organization under the authority of the Palestinian Authority, and it was very active at that time. And as a result of that terrorism, my wife and I witnessed the trauma that my son and the rest of my children had gone through as a result of having loved ones in a terror attack. And through the years, I've learned more and more about this. I started the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, or I guess Americans would call it Shiloh, Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. And the purpose is to heal the trauma of the terror victim children. So we have programs, a wide variety of therapeutic programs using art and music and animals, horseback riding therapy, and multisensory safe room therapy, all of this designed to heal the trauma of terror victim children that have suffered so much from the years of terrorism. And I'm not exaggerating if I tell you, Peter, that there is not one child in the biblical heartland of Israel, of Samaria, where I'm speaking to you from, that has not suffered from a terrorist attack. And sometimes it's not his own or her own terrorist attack that they've experienced as victims. And sometimes it's not from an immediate family. Sometimes it's from an extended family, or from a friend, or from a neighbor, or from a teacher. But everyone knows somebody who's been killed or wounded in a terrorist attack throughout Samaria and Judea. And that the trauma is intense. The PTSD, post-trauma stress disorder, is intense. And that's what the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund is involved in trying to heal. And so we've had a lot of success. And I'd like to just give a call out to your viewers to go to our website, to go to israelchildren.org. Okay, very simple website. The name of the organization is the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, but we got a simpler URL, which is israelchildren.org. And I encourage people to go to israelchildren.org and find out more about what we're doing and hopefully partner with us.
It is absolutely amazing. Been reading about it in anticipation of us talking, and it's absolutely incredible what you're doing. The therapy, like just the art therapy, just in and of itself, just being able to get them to converse, to have conversations and discuss, what's happening. How that because the volume is so much, because you're dealing with generational trauma as well. How is it? How are you able to maintain hope in dealing with this type of trauma on a day in basis with these children and teaching them hope? Where is it outside of dealing with the trauma from a psychological perspective? There has to be something from a spiritual hope base to help them kind of continue to move forward and help spread good in this world. How is it that y'all are doing this through this children's fund?
Well, some people who've heard about us, they say, I want to come see your orphanage. And I tell them we are not an orphanage. We are a family-based, faith-based operation, and that's how we heal trauma. Yes, the music and the art and the animals, they're all intermediaries that help to open up the child to the therapist. But we have to confront the question of why bad things happen to good people. We know that,
Right.
that happens. It seems like they're bad things, and it seems, and they are happening to good people. So, how do we explain that? And the answer is that that everything happens for a good reason. Everything happens for a good purpose. And we believe, that's our expression in Hebrew, hakol l'tovah. Everything is for good. Everything is for good. And it's up to us to take that evil and to turn it into good, to take the darkness and turn it into light. And that's what we do at Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. We take the darkness and we turn it into light. We help the child to understand what has happened and how they can move on, how he or she can move on with his life or her life. And very often it's group therapy, so it would be their lives. And you could see I know how to use pronouns properly.
I don't.
Hopefully America will catch up with us on that. But, I think you may have mentioned that my most recent book is called Confronting Radicals, What America Can Learn from Israel. So that's one little thing that America can learn from Israel. But anyhow, that's what we do here. And we get the family involved. Any child who is in intensive therapy, the parents are required, or parent or foster parents, or whatever it may be. If the parents have been killed or wounded in terror attacks, sometimes there's a need for a broader family support. But we get them involved. They're required to be involved, to come in for their own therapeutic sessions, for their own workshops, and that's how we do it. And we've had tremendous success. And after October 7th, we were forced to jump right into action, to send out mobile therapists, to do whatever we could to heal the trauma of those evacuees from Gaza and from northern Israel, who were being brought frantically to the center of the country. So now we're working with all of them. We're working with the terror victims who've been traumatized from previous terror attacks in the center of the country. And now a lot of the terrorism is moving to the center of the country because Hamas has been weakened somewhat in Gaza, and they're trying to renew their strength in Judea and Samaria and the so-called West Bank in the center of the country. So we're working overtime, and I don't know if you could tell, but we sometimes work 24/7 trying to heal the trauma of these terror victim children. And what can I say? We're thankful for all the support that we get from people around the world. Again, the website is Israel-Children.org.
And we're going to have that in the show notes as well for everybody who wants to learn more about it, because it is absolutely incredible. God bless you for doing that, and for helping in these help these children during these times. I'm so sorry that you've had to experience what you had to experience, to learn and understand the impact of it. And I'm certain, and I know from seeing what you're doing, that a lot of good is coming from that. So I'm very thankful for that, and thankful for what you're doing. Is there anything else that you think that's absolutely important that our listeners need to know about what's going on, or that it's like you got this one thing that I missed, I just didn't ask? Is there anything out there that you want people to know about?
Well, I just want them to understand that despite everything that's happened in the past year and a half, and in fact in the past 25 years of massive terrorism, I want people to know that they can have an impact. That it's not just, sure, we're very resilient, and we Jews, we're here in Israel, and I emphasize here in Israel, are very big Zionists. We believe that by just working hard and through struggle and a lot of faith in God, that we're going to be able to overcome all of these challenges. But I also know my Bible, and I know the prophecies that talk about how Christians will be standing with us in these times.
Yes.
And in fact, everyone who loves Israel and understands that Israel is the apple of God's eye wants to stand with Israel, and we get a lot of support from Christians. So, I think it's a good example for the world how Jews and Christians can stand together on behalf of God's land and the children of Israel. So, yeah. So that's why I'm urging people. It's not just for the need. Yes, it's mainly for the needs of the children, but it's also for a greater goal of Jews and Christians working together on behalf of Israel. And so that's why I encourage people, go to Israel-Children.org, and please help us. Please help us in what we're trying to do here.
Well, David, thank you again so much for coming on the show. I've learned a whole lot actually in this conversation. It's again, because what you're talking about that's happening there was just being there, obviously, and seeing it from a whole different perspective has been very enlightening, and I'm certain it has for everybody listening to this too. So once again, thank you so much for being on the show, and God bless you.
Thank you, Peter. God bless you and all your viewers.